要微笑要小胆。What's up, dude? So today I'm going to talk about a mountain bike skill I'm going to call a bump up. And it's basically when you use an object like a rock or a root or it could be anything to bump your front wheel and then your back wheel up and onto or over something. It could be a log or a rock or a bunch of roots. And you're going to say like, wait, that's like a bump jump. But like a bump jump is slightly different. It's more explosive. It tends to be, I mean, I'll put a few of those in the video as well. It's more explosive. It's more like an assisted or like a boosted J-hop, you know, where it's just you're exploding out of it. Where with like the bump up, it's where you're almost creating an imaginary transition. You're hitting a rock or a root or something, an obstruction, and you're just kind of lifting, and you could even be pedaling into this. You don't have to be, but you're compressing your fork. As you're hitting the thing, you're kind of pulling, like pushing your weight back. It's not really in the arms, like a lot of this stuff, like manuals and J-hops and stuff like that. It's not so much in the arms initially as in sort of the hips, and the hips are making your arms straighten out and making the front end of the bike come up. So you're putting your weight back with the fork compressed, boom, and then it's coming up, and then it's onto the rock or the log or whatever, and then your rear wheel is just kind of going to follow suit. And once you get that front wheel on, you're usually safe, usually. The impetus for this video was actually, you know, a couple of situations out here on my local trails. And one is this log situation after a little roller drop, and I didn't even realize what was happening, but when there were more leaves on the trail, but I was just kind of lofting over the thing while guys I was riding with, some of them were getting hung up on it. And why that was happening was because I am bump jumping it, but I'm hitting. There was a hidden rock or a couple rocks right before it, and I was hitting those and then actually just jumping right over it sort of effortlessly. I was surprised at how effortless it was because I didn't know there were those rocks there, and that's also what was causing other people to get hung up because they would ride right up to the log and then they would try to pull up, and what was happening was that rock was actually impeding them, where it was compressing their fork, and then they were hitting the log and then trying to pull up. And it was too late. You know, their fork had compressed. They were kind of in this little wheel trap situation because there's only, you know, maybe 3/4 of a wheel's diameter in between the rock and the log. So where I was getting this, you know, sort of this like this cheater move going where it was easier, they were getting screwed up by it. I kind of want to make this video for people who might not realize where, you know, that thing that's screwing you up could actually be the thing that saves you, that helps you. So it's a subtle move. It's something that, you know, an XC racer could use, and then every trail rider can use to kind of unlock really sort of like, sometimes it's like fidgety, annoying situations, but it's also saving energy when you're going to get up onto something, and it can start really small, stat small, dude, where, I mean, probably the best way to practice is like with anything, it's where it's low stakes, where it doesn't count. And so you see 2 roots or 2 little rocks or something, and you just try to bump your front wheel up and connect 2 points. So, you know, it could be, you know, just a couple roots, and you bump off one, try to hold that front wheel up to the next one. And that's something that, like, that will save you energy, particularly if that's a you know, bigger root and you're gonna have to absorb that with your body. If you bump off that first root or whatever obstruction, and then you're able to loft your wheel over the next thing, it's just a lot easier. And it can unlock things that might not otherwise be rideable. Okay, so this kind of silly situation right here, which is sort of the definition of rockwood, dude, was half of my motivation for doing this video. Because basically this is, you know, this is definitely not a bump jump. This is a bump from that rock there, I'll point it, this one, to that rock there. And again, this is very, very similar to that rock log situation where in between that rock, the little rock and the big guy, that is a wheel trap. The big guy there, little guy down there, and then a wheel trap in between. And so this spot, of all the spots in this place, which is very technical, causes more people to dab, including myself. And so if I'm not paying attention, I will screw up and I won't loft my front wheel and kind of connect that little rock to that big rock. But when you do that, you smoothly and easily go over this whole situation here, this whole rockwood situation, without dabbing. You kind of take it from a tiny little thing where it's safe, and then you start building up to where you can ride up onto bigger and bigger things, and you start seeing these imaginary transitions, I call them, because I'm weird. But you know, I'll show you a couple of situations here where, you know, if you just went to like ride up onto this rock shelf or whatever, it would be a move. It would be more like a trials move, where if you see that there's this little rock or whatever and you begin the wheel lift, then the transition just kind of gets filled in between your wheels. And if you hang up your rear wheel, often that's not a problem. You're still gonna roll over it. Okay, so this situation here, we've got a, well, I don't know, 2.5 foot tall rock shelf that is actually sort of coming back at you. You know, it doesn't really have like any sort of transition. It's very edgy and ledgy. And so, you know, I could probably ride up this thing, but so this comes after a succession of pretty taxing moves. And so I chucked in this perfect little cheetah rock here, dude. It's like this little square thing. And it's about a wheel diameter distance away from the rock. And what that allows you to do is you just sort of, you're bumping your front wheel on that little rock, and it's taking your front wheel up onto the top of this thing. And then you watch in some of the videos, like hopefully it translates, but it's actually just launching my rear wheel into the air. And so my rear wheel is actually coming up pretty high and totally clearing the thing. And I kind of love this. So this is definitely not a bump jump. This is a bump up, and it's creating an imaginary transition between that little rock and that big freaking rock there. Yeah, like so here you got this rock, which is actually a nice transition, and then it actually goes into this larger rock that, you know, in and of itself would be hard to ride onto. I mean, that is kind of solidly 3 feet high. And so if you were just gonna try to go from the dirt before the rock and put your wheel up here and get your rear wheel over that, that is some sort of Trials 101 stuff right there. So that is actually pretty freaking difficult. So what you can do is you begin your bump, kind of lift, you know, weight back, begin pulling back and hit that little transition there. And then you're gonna create an imaginary transition through that gap up onto this rock and over it. So here we have a situation where there's a little bump before this little rock shelf, but then someone's actually put in this little sort of helper ramp here. But for me, there's actually, you know, there's this little valley between the little rock and the ramp. So that's gonna screw me up. And so what I've always done is just bumped off that rock to the shelf here. That helper ramp is actually gonna be a hinderer ramp for me. All right, so here we got another one of those situations where you're taking that little skill, you know, where it's not so consequential, and applying it to something bigger here, where this is definitely an imaginary transition bump up situation here, where there's a little cheetah rock down there, and then there's a good like 3 foot high rock after it. So you got these little sort of bump rocks to this, you know, completely vertical 3 foot high rock face. But just get the motion down and then just start, you know, kind of ramping it up. Like everything I do, I never feel like I'm being super sketchy about it. Like I'm not nervous. It's a progression. It's always stuff that's in my wheelhouse, doesn't really make me nervous. I know I've got it. And then, you know, and if I don't, with commitment, things become safer. You know, when you're sort of half-assing stuff instead of whole-assing it, you tend to get into more dangerous situations. So if I screw up when I'm committed to something, I'm generally going to kind of fall past the problem point or be out of trouble. But that may be a separate video. All right, so that's what I got for bump ups, guys, or whatever you want to call this thing. If you have requests for other how-to videos that haven't, you know, been covered by true professionals or people who really know what they're doing, let me know, and I'll cover these annoying, weird little things that I can actually help you with, that help you get through, you know, New England, Rockwood, weird stuff that we ride here. All right, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you later. That's all, dudes.